Hi everyone, I'm back again to read chapter 37 of A Dog's Promise. A few days later we were back to visit Lacey at Ava's building of dogs and cats. Burke led me to an open-topped cage in a back, empty room, and then brought in Lacey carrying her as if she were a puppy. I whined and Lacey stared at me with those bright eyes. We both wanted to be playing together. But instead Burke sat Lacey in a chair like the one he had had as a boy, with big wheels on either side. Ava helped hold Lacey while Burke fastened some dog collars around Lacey's waist. Apparently my boy missed his chair so much he had decided to give one to Lacey, but not to me. Ava seized Lacey's collar and then walked around and around the perimeter of the room, as if a person could do pull for a dog. Lacey kept glancing frantically at me the entire time. I sat, utterly perplexed and feeling ignored. Again, I ducked inside the doghouse at the end of the cage, and then finding nothing worthy of notice, backed out. Good dog, Janji. That's it, Ava praised. She seems fine with it. Why don't you let her go and I'll call her? Burke suggested. Okay, Ava released Lacey. Come, Janji, Burke called. Lacey shook, realized she was free, and then bolted for me. The chair twisted and fell over and dragged her down with it, though within an instant she was back up and towing the fallen apparatus behind her. Janji! Ava darted forward and grabbed Lacey's collar. I wonder if Janji meant stay. Well, crap, she bent the harness. Let me fix it, Burke muttered, working with the chair. Oh, this isn't working, Ava said sadly. Just give her time. Burke, we can't let her injure herself with this thing. It will be all right. Okay, Janji, don't be so wild, okay? Steady, girl. I started in recognition. Steady. Of course, Lacey was falling out of her chair. She needed a dog to do steady. Ava walked Lacey around in circles some more, but every time when she released Lacey's collar, Lacey lunged in the chair, careened down to its side. Chachi! Ava cried. She seized Lacey and stood gazing at Burke with a mournful expression. She's just too young and wild. Well, enough of this. Lacey had showed me how to escape from similar kennels. I climbed on the doghouse and then leapt nimbly over the sides of the cage. I went straight to Lacey and did steady, right there beside her. Oscar, what are you doing? Burke demanded. Lacey yanked herself out of Ava's grip and made to climb on me, and I nipped at her, showing teeth. She reared her head back in shock. Then she tried to race around for a game of chase the dog, but I was right there, blocking her. Are you seeing what I'm seeing? Ava asked, astonished. I did assist, pushing Lacey to the wall, pinning her, and then forced her to take slow, measured steps forward. She was panting with incomprehension, but she allowed me to guide her around the room. Several times she grew impatient, but I always blocked her from scampering off. That's how we played that day, in that big empty room. Lacey wanted to wrestle, but I understood that while she was in the chair we were working, and she needed to focus on doing her part. Burke and Ava sat and watched. Whenever Lacey decided to break away, I corrected her sternly. She was utterly baffled at first, but after a time seemed to understand that if she went in a straight line, her path was easy. But if she tried to dart sideways, the chair would tilt, and I would do a rigid steady until she calmed down. Later I went for a car ride with Ava and Burke, feeling like a good dog. It's like Oscar was trained to be a support animal. For a dog, Ava marveled. Do you believe dogs can come back? Like reincarnation? Burke asked. I don't know. I've met a lot of people who think so. They'll swear to me that their new dog is the old soul of a pet they had a long time ago. Why do you ask? Because it is as if Oscar is channeling Cooper. Oscar. Are you Cooper? I barked at the name Cooper and they both laughed. Over time, Lacey seemed to understand that her chair required her to be calm, to move in a straight line in the big empty room, and not bound around erratically. She's getting pretty good at that, Burke observed. It will be hard to adopt out a dog who needs a cart, though, Ava responded. Burke slapped a hand to his chest. Adopt out, Angie? Our girl? Our child? How could you even think of such a thing? What kind of mother are you? Ava laughed and they kissed. I wagged. They were doing that a lot lately. When the snow fell, Lacey had difficulty moving when we took our walks, but Burke knew what to do. He tied a leash from Lacey's harness to mine. Okay, we're going to try something. I'll walk ahead of you and you pull, okay, Oscar? Like being a sled dog, he told me. I understood the moment the leash was tied to Lacey's harness and my own. Burke walked backward in front of me, patting his legs. I did pull, slow and measured, as I had been taught. Lacey moved much more slowly. I was happy to be doing my work again. Wow, Bert breathed, this is unbelievable. He stood staring at me in silence for a long time, and Lacey and I waited patiently. Finally, he looked around as if verifying we were close. Oscar, pull right. I immediately turned pull right. Burke asked, pull left. I switched course. Halt, Oscar. I stopped dead in my tracks. Burke was breathing rapidly, gulping in air. His fingers trembled as he undid the leash to Lacey's chair and tied her to a stair railing. Those stairs led up to a dark, cold building. I watched curiously as he lay down in the snow. He grabbed my harness and turned my head toward the building. Oscar, assist. At last, I triumphantly turned to do assist for Burke up those steps, wishing there were children sitting on them to watch. When we reached the top, Burke was weeping. He gasped, my head in his hands. Below us, Lacey stirred helplessly. Cooper, his whisper was ragged. Are you Cooper? I was his Cooper. I wagged happily. Whether my name was Cooper or Riley or Oscar, I loved being held by Burke. He wiped his eyes. My God, Cooper, is it really you? He crushed me to his chest. I don't know what I believe, but it's you, Cooper. It's really you. I never stopped loving you. Never forgotten you for a moment. You're my best friend. Okay, Cooper? I closed my eyes, loving my boy. We drove to the farm where the snow was deep and there were lights in everyone's trees and shrubs. As often happens when the air is cold, the farm had a tree growing inside it, which I sniffed suspiciously. I'd always felt pretty sure that I lifted my leg on the indoor trees, I would be breaking a rule. The baby goat had grown to be a lot bigger. She slept in the house that used to belong to Judy. Her name was Ethel the goat. Everyone seemed relaxed and happy, and I was pretty sure I knew why. We were all finally at the farm together. Well, except Lacey, who stayed back with Sam, Dad, and Marla for some reason. I figured Lacey would eventually show. So Dad has something to tell you, and then Wendling and I have something to tell you too, Grant announced. He looked pleased with himself. Chase Dad shifted uncomfortably. Well? Burke nodded. Well? Chase Dad took a long sip of his drink. People were very thirsty that night. Lehman sold her house. Burke nodded. Sure, okay. He cocked his head. And? Ava brightened. Oh, Wendling smiled. Exactly. Burke frowned. Exactly what exactly? Chase Dad cleared his throat. Lehman and Wendling both live here now. Burke was looking at everyone. Ava elbowed him. That's wonderful, she pronounced pointedly. Burke regarded her with a perplexed expression. Wonderful? Yes, Burke, Ava said patiently. It is wonderful that Lehman moved in with your father. Oh. Ooh. Burke said, his eyes wide. Oh! His mouth dropped open. Chase Dad gave him an embarrassed grin. Yeah. Burke turned to Lehman. That's great, Lehman. Lehman beamed. It took him long enough to ask, and then he said only, maybe you should put your house on the market. Everyone laughed. The trio meant they're so romantic. Wendling sighed to more laughter. I wagged out at all the joy, thinking they might want to bring me out a ball or a squeaky toy, but not a nylon ball. So what do you want to tell us, Grant? Ava asked. Wendling and Lehman glanced at each other, smiling broadly. Grant stood up. I am pleased to announce that this coming June, right here on this piece of profitable property, Wendling is going to marry me. Ava jumped to her feet with a squeal. Oh my God! She ran to Wendling and they hugged. Then everyone stood, so I barked. Wait, Wendling, are you enormously fat? Burke asked, and she laughed along with him. Lehman brought out the odd-shaped box with metal cables. She handed the thing to Chase Dad, who pulled it into his lap as if he were a puppy. Dad's going to play, Burke demanded in disbelief. Grant nodded. Oh, Lehman's brought a lot of changes to this house. She sings with the band now. Burke made a surprised noise, so I looked at him. We changed the name, Dad said with a nod. Now we're four bad musicians plus a chick who can sing. Everyone laughed. They all sat in a tight circle, and Chase Dad ran his fingers along the strings, filling the air with a hum. Here's one I wrote. I call it Dry Start to Summer. Everyone laughed again. I nosed my way into the middle, carrying a squeaky toy, knowing this was what they would actually want. For some reason, Lacey never showed up at that visit, so we returned home to be with her. Burke and Ava talked the whole way while I slept in the back seat. The next time we were on the farm, the days were long and the grass was fresh and soft. Lacey stayed home to be with Marla and Sam Dad again, which made no sense at all to me. I bounded out of the chair, and Wendling and Grant were there to meet me. There's the bride-to-be, Burke said. How is everything going? Chaotic, but fine, Wendling replied. So you decide not to bring Lacey? I glanced up at her, hearing Lacey's name and a question. I wondered if she was asking where Lacey was, something I was questioning myself. Lacey, Burke replied. Wendling, you mean Janji? I said Lacey. Wendling laughed. Ava was pulling a bag out of the trunk. Genji's cart is great on pavement, but we didn't think she could maneuver on the terrain here, so Dad and Marla are watching her. Grant grabbed a bag himself. Hey, Burke, you want to help me string some lights in the trees a little later? I think I'd rather hear more speculation about Wendling's dress. I just can't get enough of that subject, Wendling replied. It was a hot, hot afternoon. I found myself frequently taking advantage of the water dish. Burke and Grant climbed the big tree next to the underbarn stairs, trailing ropes after them. I figured they were going to pull the doors off again. There were no lingering scents of the creatures who had once taken refuge in the large hole. I had terrified it, obviously, and it never dared return. Remember how I climbed higher than you and then dropped eggs on your face? Burke laughed. It was one egg, so I jumped down and pulled the ladder away, and you were stuck until at dinner. Grandma asked where you were, and Dad made me tell because my laughter gave it away. Climbing trees was not easy for me. Dropping to the ground without helping legs, not so much. Hey, Grant. Yeah? I'm really happy for you. You and Wendling. Thanks, Burke. They smiled at each other. It was at that moment that the wind hit like a slap. I turned my face to it, drinking in a blast of wet, cool air. The tinkling ropes Burke and Grant were hanging began swinging in the stiff breeze. Whoa, Grant said. Where did that come from? It feels 20 degrees cooler. After a short time, I heard a deep, low rumble. So low I felt it in my chest like a growl. I looked up to the trees where Grant and my boy were still talking and playing with ropes. Chase Dad came out, the door banging behind. Looks like we're going to get some weather. He peered up as his son. You about done? I don't think it's a good idea to be in a tree with an electrical storm. Grant smiled down at him. If the lights aren't perfect, it will ruin the wedding. The dress might have it. Ava has seen pictures. I'm not allowed because I'm the best man, but I'm allowed to hear about for 7 straight hours, Burke noted. It's probably the most beautiful dress, and it will look perfect on Wendling's skin, but Ava is too pale, and if it were her dress, she would wear a slightly less blue white, more of a cream white, or possibly an ecru white, but never a blush white, because on her it would look tacky. Chase Dad grinned down. Come on, down now, you two. There was a crack of thunder, and everyone jumped. They turned their heads. Man, look at the sky, Burke said. You ever see it so dark? And yet, right over there, it is still sunny. Grant dropped down off the ladder next to him. Crazy. The wind carried with it the smell of rain. I raised my nose to it. So, Dad, Grant shared with me that you asked Leeman if she wanted to make it a double ceremony. And she told you that if you mentioned anything to Wendling about the two of you getting married, that would ruin the wedding, Burke observed shyly. Chase Dad put his hands on his lips. Did Grant also tell you that I asked him not to tell anyone? I'm just thinking it's a pretty fraught situation, Burke drawled. Chase Dad shook his head. I sure stepped in. I thought it was a reasonable question, but Leeman acted like I suggested we commit murder together. So you're engaged to be engaged. Last time I heard of somebody in our family trying that, it didn't go so well, Burke replied. Lucky for Dad, it doesn't have a brother sticking his nose where it doesn't belong, Grant said pointedly. Far away, a roar was building. It was faint, but somehow felt huge to me. I looked up at my people, but they were laughing and talking. If they weren't worried, should I be? Hey, Dad, Burke said, in all seriousness, how did the guy who turned down every eligible woman in the county wind up wanting to get married again? Chase Dad smiled. Every woman in the county? He reached down and petted me in the way people do when they're not really aware of what they're doing. Seriously, Burke persisted. Chase Dad drew in a breath and blew it out. Grant's Dad, I don't think I've ever felt loved by a woman before. Least a woman who didn't want me to leave the farm or be someone I wasn't. When I'm with Leeman, I'm at peace. She was there in front of me the whole time, and when I finally saw her, I knew she was the one. Grant nodded. I know the feeling. Chase Dad cleared his throat. I want you boys to know there was never anything going on with Leeman while Zizi was alive. I would never have thought that, Burke replied. Grant nodded. Zizi was my absolute best friend, Chase Dad continued. We know, Dad, Grant reassured him. My hackles rose. I looked off into distance, not seeing the threat, not understanding it, but sensing danger. What is it, Oscar? Burke reached down and gave me a reassuring pat. Then the wind died down completely, as if someone had shut a window. The men all frowned. the calm before the storm, Grant observed. Let's head in before we get wet, Chase Dad suggested. I sat and watched anxiously as they put the ladder in the barn, picked up some papers, and then finally began walking toward the house. The roar was now louder now, and then, rising sharply to the top of it, I heard a howl, forlorn and eerie. The men heard it too. They all turned their heads at once, gazing toward them. Tornado siren, Chase Dad noted. Ava stepped out onto the porch. Is that what I think it is? She called. We better get down to the storm cellar, Chase Dad said tensely. Ava turned back toward the house. Wendling, Lehman, come on. We need to get into the tornado shelter. Burke turned. I'll get the goat. I could not only hear that angry roar now, I could feel it. Something was coming. The end. Chapter 38.